All right, we're continuing with Chapter 2, 2.1, 2.2. We created frequency distribution, and we want to talk about creating histograms from that information. I grabbed some examples here, frequency histograms. I want to look at them all for 1 minute, and then I'll get a little closer for you. I just want to look at the graphs for a second. These are histograms. Notice the histograms have no spaces between their bars. Their bars are vertical bars. And each bar represents a class from your distribution table. Okay? Let's look at this first one here nice and close up. These are prices of GPS navigators. And this one is labeled with boundaries. Remember the down from each of the classes. So if you can picture it, this class, this first number here, what is the first lower limit in your class? Well, if this boundary is a half point down, then this is 59. Okay? And if this boundary is a half up, then this is 114. So those are the class limits for the first class. Okay? And these are all listed by boundary numbers. So you can imagine this last class limit. These are prices again. So $59 to $114. And we counted how many of them were offered in that price range. And there was 5. Okay, 5 different ones. So when you go to this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th class over here, you can see that the highest price you could pay would be for 50. Okay, this is a half a step down from 395, right? So the last class was the class limits between $395 and $450. There was 3 of those. Okay, you can see that this is the most common. We had 8 in this price range from $114 to $170. Seems to be a more typical price. But then you have higher ends and lower ends for that. Okay? So if you look at this one, what's the difference between this one and this one? Notice that it is the y-axis. This is the y. This is the x-axis where the prices are. The y-axis has the number, right? This is where this 5, 8, 6, 7 is coming from. So as you go down here, notice that you now have the relative frequency instead of the frequency, okay? The relative frequency, remember, is that percentage or your decimal that you're getting before you turn it into a percentage. So the bars look exactly the same, it's just you have percentages. So this one here, you can see that 8 comes out to about, I don't know, 27% maybe of the GPSs have a price range of $114 to $170. That's how you read that, okay? And this last one here is the same information, the same appearance in their bars, the same frequency over here. It's just that they're labeled with class midpoints, okay, instead of boundaries. This little zigzaggy thing can be called a broken axis because it just doesn't go from 0 to whatever the lower, what did we say the lower one was? The lower one was 59. It goes from 0 to 59 really fast, so it just kind of squishes the axis over there, and then it's spaced evenly. All your bars have the same amount of width to them, right? Because they're class widths. To find class widths, you can add their subtract their midpoints. 142.5 minus 86.5 is going to give you the class width. I did it on the side here, is 56. You can also take 114.5 minus 58.5. You can also subtract your boundaries to get the class width of 56. But what you cannot do is take the 114 and the 59. 114 minus 59, you are going to get 55. So it's the upper limit minus the lower limit plus 1 in this case would give you the class width of 56. That's why when we were making the frequency table, it is recommended you do all the lower limits first, because if you go across, you're going to be one short. So it's class width from boundary to boundary, class width from midpoint to midpoint, class width going down the lower limits or up the upper limits, or adding a certain number to it to get to the class width from the limits. All right, so let's answer these questions. It says, what is the minimum price of a GPS? Well, that would be the lower limit of the class, which is 59. The maximum price is the upper limit of the last class. The number of classes I counted out was 7. The range of prices, the literal range would be the max minus the min, right? So that's going to be 450 minus 59 equals 391. 391 is the range. Class width is the range divided by the number of classes, which is, I should just write a 7 under there. And when you do that, you get 55.857. And remember, we always round up, so that's 56. And that coincides with subtracting my boundaries or subtracting my midpoints. Okay. The lower boundary of the first class. The lower boundary of the first class was 58.5. The upper boundary of the first class was 114.5. The lower limit of the first class was 59. The upper limit of the first class was 114. How many GPS navigators are included? Okay, well, let's go back to their frequency. 5 plus 8 plus 6 plus 5 plus 2 plus 1 plus 3 comes out to 30, right? Add their frequency, the cumulative frequency. Which class do most of the GPS locators fall in? Number 2. Answer the following about this one class. What is the average price of the average price? Price range. First, let's get the price range of class 2. It's easier to look at the boundaries. If that is 114.5, that means this is 115. Remember, 114 was in the first class. It's in that bucket. 115 and up is in this bucket with a ceiling of, let's see, 1/2 down from that would be 170. What is the average price? Well, that's code word for midpoint. The other graph shows the midpoint is 142.50, but if you didn't have the other graph, it would be 115 plus 170 divided by 2, and that gives you your 142.50 as well. Okay, approximately what percentage fall into this class? What percentage? Well, 8 fall in the class. 8 fall in the class out of 30. So that comes out to 0.26 repeating. So approximately 27% fall in there. How many fell into this class or below? This is the second class. There were 5 below. 8 plus 5 is 13 GPS. The cumulative frequency of the first 2 classes is 13. Okay, I know I did that really fast, but I can only make so many videos here, and I have another page to get through. So in the textbook, they had a set of numbers to use for the concept. These are ages of presidents, and they listed them for you. Turns out to be 44 of them in the list, and the number of classes desired was 7, just to get a nice picture on the number. And if you look through all that data on that page, you will find step 1 is your minimum number and your maximum number. So 69 was the max. The minimum was 42. So if you subtract them, you'll get a range of 27. Came out to an even number there. And then 27 divided by the number of classes, range divided by class number, is 3.8, which we always round up to 4 is your class width. Okay, remember we're looking at the steps. I think they're on page 2 of this lesson to do this, okay? And then how do you start with your limit column? We have 7 classes, and we always start with the minimum value, and we add the class width. So the next one's 46, and work our way down. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And the next one, if I had one, would be 70, which means this starts at 69. So if this is 66, this is 65. If this is 62, this is 61. Working our way back up. (45). Notice that going across, 45 minus 42 is 3. So you'd have to add 1 if you're talking about limits to get class width. Okay. Midpoints, if you're asked, the midpoint of the first class would be 42 plus 45 divided by 2. I was looking at my notes. It doesn't say that on my notes, but I don't know if you're going to be asked that or not. 43.5. So your midpoints are able to be not an actual value. Okay. I don't know if I just wanted to add that to mention that. All right. And then I went through the tally myself to find out the frequency of how many fall into each class. It came out to 2, 7, 8, 16, 5, 4, and 2. And then I double checked that that came out to a total of, that's a 4. 44, right? That's better total up to my end to make sure I got them all. And then I figured all the relative frequencies. Okay, and figured them out as decimals. The decimals are going to add up to a 1. The percents are going to add up to a 0. Remember, if you multiply this by 100, this is 4.5%. So very few of them were that age. Okay, and then the cumulative frequency is 2. 2 plus 7 is 9, plus 8 is 17, plus 16 is 33, plus 5, 38, plus 4, 42, plus 2 is 44. And that should be also equal to n. Okay, so that's the cumulative frequency. So what can you say about the president's ages? You can say that most of them fell in the class or in the age group of 54 to 57. At this time, the oldest president fell in the 66 to 69 range when they were elected. The youngest fell in the 42 to 45 years old group. Clearly, this is a peak. This is so unimodal. We'll get into that. There was a clear place where the average and the most fell. But that's how you make a frequency distribution. And I just wanted to add a few interesting points. When they're nice whole numbers like we were using, to make your boundaries, it's very easy to go down a half and up a half. When it's whole numbers, down a half, up a half. When you get more decimals, I wasn't sure what's in the homework. When you get more decimals, going down, it's not a half, it's half a decimal value. So if this is 3/5, then the half before it is 3/4/5. So it's one decimal place past and then half of it. So if the upper end is 18, it's a little easier to understand the upper end. If the upper end's limit is 18.46, this would be 18.465 for the boundaries. Okay, so when there's one decimal, you go down a half with an extra value. So if this is one decimal, I need 2 decimal places in my boundaries. Okay, so 18.5, another decimal half would be that. I don't know if I'm saying it right, but I hope you can visualize that. The midpoints, remember it's 58 plus 62 divided by 2 gives you 60, but this was 4, so 60 is in the middle. That's right? The midpoint of this one turns out to be 128, and you have to use all of these decimals. Remember, you're just adding whatever the limits are, so you add the limits to get the midpoints and divide by 2. Okay, this one comes out to 17.405. This one comes out to 17.4. The tricky part was the class widths. Okay, the class widths, if I only have the limits, it's very tricky to find that. So it's better to find the boundaries or the midpoints and subtract them. So let me do this one. So this is 62.5 minus 57.5. Get my calculator here. 62.5 plus 57.5 is 120. So hang on, I'm trying to get to 5. Last boundaries. Did I do something wrong? Oh, I added them. I should have subtracted. I was like, wait, that doesn't make any sense. Sorry, hang on. That's what happens when I do stuff too fast. I'm almost finished. I have a little clock that shows me how many minutes my video is taking. 62.5 minus 57.5 is 5. That's a little better. Okay, so you can subtract boundaries to get your class width. You can also go from midpoint to midpoint, but I don't have the next one in there. But if you had to use your limits, it would be 62 minus 58 plus 1 would give you the 5. Okay, so the next one would be 131.5 minus 124.5 equals 131.5 minus 124.5 equals 7. Or you can take 131 minus 125 plus 1 will also give you 7. So that way it gets a little tricky when you get into the decimals. Okay, so this is 16.345 from 18.465. Let me put that in the calculator. So 18.465 minus 16.345 comes out to 212. That's the class width. To check that, it gets a little strange. It turns out to be 8 point this minus 16.35 is plus 0.01 will give you 2.12. So it's just easier to go and subtract boundaries. So if you get the limits, make the boundaries, then find the class width that way if you have to. Okay, and for this one it's even stranger. It would be 18.5 minus, or that one was pretty strange, 16.3 plus 0.1 would give you the 2.3 this one is. 18.55 minus 16.25, let me just double check that. 18.55 minus 16.25. That gives you your 2.3 as well.